15 spine-chilling horror stories revealed, terrifying haunted encounters you must not sleep on. Jake's heart raced as his breath caught in his throat. Shadows loomed in the corners of his home, whispers so soft they seemed to be brushing against his ears. The glamorous visions of suburban bliss had long faded, now all that remained was the suffocating dread of the unseen. He was alone, left to guard the crumbling remnants of his life while his mother, Laura, toiled away at the diner. The clock ticked ominously as familiarity twisted into something far more sinister. Then, the phone calls began. Each ring sliced through the silence like a razor. Sometimes he answered, and all he heard was heavy breathing, other times just a low, menacing chuckle. Who was playing these twisted games? He checked the locks and peeked through parted blinds, but found nothing. Just the faintest streetlight flickering, revealing shadows shimmering through the rain. The ordinary grew grotesque. One stormy night, desperate for distraction, Jake discovered an online forum brimming with chilling accounts of hauntings and disappearances. Just stories, he thought at first, but the more he read, the deeper his fascination grew. There were tales of twisted betrayals, of neighbors who vanished into thin air, their houses sitting empty, watching. Each thread felt too close to home, weaving eerie connections to the people he once considered safe. As he scrolled, oppression filled his chest, the weight of their neighbors' dark secrets sagged on his shoulders, the once comforting creaks of their home now echoed like laughter, mocking him. Late-night shadows morphed into phantoms, and muffled footsteps echoed across the hardwood floors. Fear spiraled into terrifying paranoia. He called the police, but they dismissed his worries as just a teenager's imagination. Stripped of any sense of security, Jake realized their protectors were simply ghosts of apathy. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Amidst this spiraling dread, he found an ally in Emily, a quiet girl with an unsettling laughter and family secrets wrapped up tight. Together, they pored over those frightening stories, sharing their own hometown horrors. Each revelation chipped away at their innocence, the sinister connection sizzled just beneath the surface. It was as if the ghost of their community had an electric pulse, threatening to shock awake everything they'd ever trusted, yet, it only escalated. He began tracking odd patterns, flickering lights, whispers that scratched against his skin, shadows lurking longer than they should. It became a matter of survival, not just for him but for Laura. Trust was now a luxury they couldn't afford. Every neighbor became a potential threat. Then they uncovered a chilling revelation, a hidden thread that tied Jake's family to the web of horror they were desperate to escape. The line between the supernatural and the mundane fractured, leaving a haunting question: who was the real monster, and just how far would they go to protect their own? As the edges of his world twisted tighter, a door creaked in the stillness, revealing a figure he thought to be an ally. With uncertainty coursing through his veins, Jake's heart pounded with an unshakable realization: the true hauntings weren't ghosts but the very people they lived beside. Who could he really trust? Jake's pulse thundered in his ears, drowning out the quiet chatter of the house and warping it into something sinister. The figure emerged slowly from the shadows, revealing familiar features that twisted inside his gut. Emily's smile faltered, her eyes wide with a blend of fear and doubt. "Jake?" she whispered, voice trembling. As if reading his thoughts, the shadows behind her darkened further, creeping along the walls like poisonous vines. "What are you doing here?" He forced himself to sound brave. "You shouldn't be sure." Emily raised a finger to her lips, her gaze darting behind him. "You're not safe here. They're watching. I saw them." Jake's breath turned shallow. The walls seemed to thrum with a life of their own, vibrating with something malicious. "Who? The neighbors?" "Yes. I was outside. I heard them talking. They're planning something." Jake's mind raced back to every hushed greeting and polite smile exchanged. Were they all in on it? He swore he could feel eyes upon him even in the hollow dims of his den. Suddenly, clattering sounds erupted in the kitchen, followed by an ominous thud. Jake's heart leaped into his throat. What was that? Maybe it's just the wind, Emily suggested weakly, but Jake could see her resolve crumbling. The sound came again, louder this time, echoing with the foreboding weight of an impending storm. It felt as if the house itself held its breath, waiting for something terrible to unfold. Let's check it out, Jake urged, a surge of adrenaline pushing him forward. They crept through the hallway, shadows melting around them like ink in water. Each sightless corner was a mouth waiting to swallow them whole. As they drew closer to the kitchen, the air thickened with dread. Jake's instincts screamed at him to turn back. Yet the question loomed, were they ready to face what lay ahead, or would the darkness devour them whole? With a trembling hand, he reached for the door handle, an electric jolt rushing through him as he twisted it open. The kitchen revealed itself, unkempt yet still normal at least on the surface. Dirty dishes piled high in the sink, and expired takeout containers littered the countertop. In that moment, it felt more like a trap than a living space, but the unease was palpable. Something was off. What did you see? Jake pressed, stepping further inside. I couldn't tell, but they were all together. Her voice was barely above a whisper. And I think they were talking about you. A chill seeped through Jake's bones. The walls felt invasive, closing in as he envisioned the neighbors' faces, every smile tainted with secrets he was desperate to uncover. Before he could respond, the kitchen door slammed shut behind them with a shocking force. The latch clicked, locking them in. The room grew colder, a ghostly chill swirling around them, making the hairs on the back of Jake's neck stand on end. Jake! Emily shrieked, panic piercing through her normally calm demeanor. Fear clashed with adrenaline, twisting him into knots. He turned, eyes wide, as a low voice echoed from the darkness. It was sweet, saccharine, laced with malice. We've been waiting for you. Panic twisted through his gut. Who was we? With a desperate surge of courage, Jake charged to the door, but it wouldn't budge. Panic flooded his lungs. He banged against it, yet it felt like a prison, something ancient and cruel trapping them. Their time was running out, and Jake had to figure out if he was about to confront neighbors or something much worse. As he stumbled back, eyes darting around the cramped space, another presence swirled through the kitchen, shadows leaping at the edges of his vision. Realization struck him hard. What was waiting for him outside? What else had Emily stumbled upon? Jake's thoughts spiraled. In that moment, he understood they had crossed a line. And now there was no turning back. Now, as he locked eyes with Emily, they shared a wordless understanding. They needed to fight for their lives against the darkness closing in. But were they truly prepared for what lurked just beyond the door? In that instant, he recalled the stories he'd read, the chilling encounters coming to life, playing out before him. Who was the real monster? And how far would he have to go to find out? The walls seemed to breathe along with him, anticipating the next move. What awaited them in that suffocating darkness might be more than they ever signed up for. Jake's heart raced, a wild metronome keeping rhythm with the panic closing in. The kitchen felt smaller, darker, as if something were feeding on their fear. The voice lingered, a haunting echo wrapping around them, teasing, beckoning. Stay close, he whispered, barely aware of his own trembling. Emily nodded, her eyes glittering with both terror and determination, the fight still flickering within her. Inching back toward the shadows, Jake's fingers brushed against something cold and metallic hidden beneath a pile of junk. He glanced down. A knife. Its blade glimmered despite the dim light, a sliver of hope in a sea of despair. He picked it up, feeling the weight soothe his racing pulse, if only slightly. Jake. Emily's voice cut through the air, raw and frayed at the edges. What if they know we're here? They do know, a voice cooed from the darkness, smooth as silk, surrounding them like fog. They've been waiting, just like we have. Jake swung around, gripping the knife tighter. The shadows shifted, coiling into forms that seemed to mock him, a shapeless mass of malice. He felt them creeping closer, sinking deeper into his skin. "Get away from us!" he shouted, a futile command among the deafening silence. The walls sighed, a mournful sound that sent shivers down his spine. "You think you can leave? We've prepared for this. You were chosen." "Chosen?" Emily asked, bewildered, the defiance hardening her voice. "What do you mean?" But the shadows danced in laughter, a cacophony of whispers slithering through the air. "Oh, sweet Emily, your ignorance is endearing, but we will awaken the truth soon enough." Jake stepped protectively in front of her, his instincts hardening. "We're not afraid of you," he declared, though his voice trembled in defiance. "Fear is the least of your worries, darling," the voice teased, dripping with malice. "There's no escaping what's coming. You're a part of it now." He lunged for the door, banging against it again, losing himself in desperation. Blood rushed in his ears. "Open! Let us out!" The deep, low laughter filled the room, echoing from every corner. "You cannot escape fate, Jake, not here, not ever." "What is this? What do you want from us?" he shouted, his anger igniting the fear that had previously paralyzed him. There was a pause, and then, from the blackness, a figure began to materialize. Tall and spectral, it glided toward them, its features wavering like an image losing focus. The sickly sweet scent of decay wafted through the air. "Each of you holds a secret, a desire buried. We want it. We need it to awaken our master." Jake's stomach nodded at the implications. What part of him was worth taking? "No!" he yelled, adrenaline fueling his resistance. "We won't let you. Let us see how long you can hold on to your precious secrets," the figure hissed, reaching out with hands that seemed to blur at the edges. Each appendage elongated, twisting into claws that captured the dim light like hungry mouths. The walls began to pulse, the sound akin to heavy breathing. "The game begins now." Emily backed away, terror-stricken. "Jake! What do we do?" He felt the panic welling, clawing at his chest. "We fight. We find a way out of this nightmare." But the shadows thickened, coiling tighter, whispering vile promises that sliced through Jake's resolve. He had one choice to make: face the creeping horror or surrender to it. Just then, the floor beneath them vibrated, and a deafening crack tore through the kitchen. The tiles splintered and began to shift, revealing a gaping maw of darkness. "Join us," the voices sang in unison, a cruel symphony inviting them into the void. Jake's breath hitched as he felt the pull. "No!" He fought against the terrifying compulsion, but Emily grabbed his arm, her eyes pleading. "Jake! We have to go." Together, he managed to say, wrestling with the grasp of the abyss, but the call grew stronger, the shadows laughing, promising power, freedom, answers. Together he commanded, and as he and Emily locked eyes, a deeper fear pooled in his gut. With a united resolve, they turned to confront the darkness together. Willing to plunge into whatever awaited on the other side. As their hands clasped tighter, a feral growl erupted from the shadows, and the figures surged toward them, ready to seize their secrets and plunge them into eternal night. Would their resolve hold against the overwhelming force, or was it already too late? The ground beneath them jerked, but it wasn't just the floor. The very structure of the house shook as if it were alive, a beast awakening from a long slumber. Dark tendrils crept from the crack, slithering toward them like snakes seeking warmth, their whispers rising in a chaotic frenzy. "Jake, I can't do this." Emily's voice cracked, fear straining her breath. "We need to get out now." He felt the tremor in her grip, the desperation in her eyes, but still they stood firm, locked in a moment of trembling defiance. "I won't let them take you," he promised, his voice barely above a whisper. But deep down, doubt gnawed at him, whispering insidious thoughts about the horrors that awaited them. The growls grew louder, otherworldly, a terrifying symphony resonating with each heartbeat in the pitch-black void. Jake's palms slickened, and his throat tightened as the shadows began to swirl, feeding on their fear, rising as though they were made of the very essence of darkness itself. With a sudden surge of movement, Jake lunged towards the crack in the floor, knife held out like a talisman. "Get back!" he roared, aiming at the shadows. But it wasn't the shadows that recoiled. They surged forward, an avalanche of darkness crashing against him. An icy chill enveloped his heart as the faces of the damned emerged familiar, twisted, contorted with agony. Friends, family, all the people who had ever succumbed to despair. Their mouths opened in a silent scream, accusing him, blaming him for their pain. "You let us in," they whispered, their voices a cacophony now, smashing together into a single terrifying utterance. "You brought us here." "No." Jake screamed, forcing the words out through the confusion. He was right there, their eyes pleading, filled with an emotion he couldn't decipher, regret, anger, fear. What did they want from him? "I didn't mean to. I didn't know." They grow stronger with each lie. The smirking specter loomed larger, its claw-like fingers slowly unfurling, inching toward Emily with a malicious hunger. Without thinking, his instincts kicked in. He slashed the knife through the shadow attempt to clutch Emily, the blade passing through with an eerie sound, like slicing through cold, wet rubber. The specter's shriek filled the air, twisting into something unsettling, a blend of outrage and surprise. Emily turned, terror redefining her features. "Jake! It's coming for us." His breath hitched as the darkness reformed, the gash he created mending as if it never existed. "You'll have to do better than that." It taunted, its voice thick with posturing confidence. "Each blow you strike fuels their existence." "Then what do we do?" Emily choked out, tears spilling over as the shadows surged again, whispering her secrets and dreams back to her, images of what she desired most warped into grotesque horrors. "Stay together," Jake managed, gripping Emily's shoulders tightly while fighting the urge to let despair seep into his bones. He looked into her eyes, searching for that flicker of hope, the fight that sparked in both of them. "We will face it. We will beat them together." Suddenly, the house buckled again, the walls quaking as something deep within them ruptured a pulsing heart. Light seeped through the cracks, shining bright and warm, a beacon amid the encroaching darkness. "Freedom lies within it," echoed through the air, an enticing whisper, promising salvation. "No. Don't listen," Jake urged, gripping her tighter as the ground opened wider, beckoning with promises both sweet and venomous. "It's a trick. We can't give in." The spectral forms hesitated, swirling in the luminous glow, anger boiling in their features as they writhed under the light. "You cannot escape," they screeched, voices blending with the roar of the house cracking under pressure. The light pulsed once more, pulsing along with their resolve, and for the first time, he felt the shadows back away as if the light burned them. But they still loomed, waiting, threatening to snap back at any moment. "Jake, we have to do something," Emily shouted, her voice thin against the surge of terror. "Together," he yelled, convinced that if they held on tight enough, they would break through the darkness. But deep down, a cold knot tightened in his stomach. What if it wasn't enough? What if that beacon of hope was just another lie? As the shadows began to spiral faster, ready to close in again, he felt a shudder run through both of them. He clasped her hand, the warmth grounding him as they braced against the rising tide, the next wave of fear and darkness approaching. Together the shadows were relentless. Would their bond and light be enough to pierce through the abyss, or would the shadows succeed in dragging them into eternal night? The air thickened, charged with tension, as they prepared to face the looming dusk once more. Jake could feel the chilling tendrils closing in again, a visceral warning that time was running out. The shadows, coiling with darkness, trembled in response to the pulsing light, an angry orchestra stirring to life. Emily's grip tightened around his fingers, anchoring him as he clenched the knife, his lifeline against the looming horror. "Don't let go," Jake shouted, his voice edged with desperation. The walls groaned, their decrepit forms sagging as the very foundation of the house seemed to sigh under the weight of their fear. Outside, the wind howled, a dreadful companion to the tumult within. The growls returned, low and guttural, as if the house itself were warning them. The shadows rippled like oil on water, hungry and insatiable, boasting of their power. We grow stronger, they hissed in unison. Together, we shall consume. Shut up. Jake barked, feeling the adrenaline pulse through him like fire. Panic clawed at his throat, a reminder of their vulnerability. He didn't dare let go of Emily's hand, but doubt pierced through his resolve. What if they were too late? What if the light was nothing but a trick? Emily's voice trembled, drawing him back to the present. She was staring wide-eyed at the floor where the crack had split wider, a swirling vortex of darkness forming, each swirl like the draw of a siren's call. It's pulling me, fight it. Don't give in. He couldn't tear his gaze from her, panic surging like a tidal wave. The shadows weren't merely creeping, they were reaching, invading, wrapping around her ankles like vicious vines. She gasped, the breath hitching as she fought against the sensation, but he could see it in her eyes. Her resolve flickered, doubt beginning to claw its way in. I can't hold on. Yes, you can. He cried, feeling the knife slip in his grip as sweat drenched his palms. We are strong. Before he could finish, a bone-chilling shriek erupted from the shadows. The air thickened, heavy with anguish. The spectral faces morphed, widening grotesquely with hunger, coiling around the light like moths drawn to a flame. Suddenly, the shadows lunged, jagged edges reaching for Emily. No. Jake lunged forward, thrusting the knife into the fray as if it were a lifeline. The blade sank into the darkness, and for a moment, he felt a crisp disconnect, as if the shadows were made of brittle matter. But they screamed louder, their fury mingling with a cacophony of voices, pleading and wailing, a chorus of the lost, and yet, through it all, he recognized a familiar tone, one that made his heart drop. Jake! Help me! The voice was soft but unmistakably familiar, his sister's. A chill spread through him, an icy grasp in his chest. Why did you leave me? Emily, I see her. He gasped amidst the swirl of specters. It's my sister. We have to know. Don't listen. Emily's voice shattered his focus, and he felt a fleeting moment of clarity as she pulled him back, her terror grounding him anew. It's a trick. The shadows howled in response, thrumming against the light like a storm against the shore. Traitor! You bind her! The specters hissed, writhing in a frenzy. The vortex expanded, sucking air from his lungs, and he felt the weight of despair looming larger with each heartbeat. I won't betray you. He shouted, shifting his stance against the encroaching darkness. We will face them together. Light! Yelled Emily, her voice rising in a wave of courage as she turned towards the growing beacon seeping through the cracks. It's our only hope. In that moment of raw intensity, they both moved toward the light, dark whispers still clawing at their consciousness, their grip strained but unwavering. As they stepped closer, the air shimmered, the chaos around them warping as the house screamed in protest. Do you wish to abandon your kin? To leave her to wander? The shadows mocked, their voices curling like smoke around them, twisted and cruel. No. Jake gritted his teeth, clutching Emily's hand tighter. We have to choose. But with every step they took, doubt resurfaced, threatening to shatter their resolve. What if fighting back meant losing more than just this struggle? What if accepting the light was simply another betrayal? With the house collapsing around them, as shadows recoiled and lunged, they made one final leap towards the light that seemed to offer salvation. Together. They shouted as the shadows unleashed their most formidable attack, a final wave of darkness crashing toward them. Would they emerge on the other side, or would the light extinguish, leaving them dashed against the rocks of oblivion? The moment they reached the edge of light, a blinding explosion erupted, pushing against the shadows with a force that sent ripples through the darkness. Jake felt the intense heat wash over him, a brief moment where fear battled with hope. The shadows shrieked, their terrible wails drowning out everything else, a sound that promised despair and darkness. Move! Emily yelled, pulling him forward just as tendrils of inky blackness clawed desperately at their heels. He plunged through the light, heart racing, and in an instant, the air shifted. It felt thick, pressing against him like a heavy blanket. They landed hard that he glanced around and realized they weren't in the house anymore. They were in a small, dilapidated room, walls stained and crumbling, a single flickering bulb hanging precariously from the ceiling. The light was dim, casting eerie shadows that danced and flickered across the walls like wraiths. The air smelled of mildew and something else, something rotten. "Where are we?" Emily breathed, her voice shaky. "I don't know." Jake's eyes darted around, alert for movement. The room seemed to pulse with an energy he couldn't quite understand, a deep, resonating hum that sent shivers down his spine. The shadows from the house had not vanished, they crept along the edges of this new space. It was as if they drew strength from the very walls around them. Jake felt the weight of their presence pressing down, suffocating. "We won't be safe here long," he said, trying to hide the tremor in his voice. Emily clenched her fists. "We need to find a way out." As they moved toward the only door, a cold realization gripped Jake. What if we're not really free? What if this is just another part of their game? "Stop it!" Emily snapped. "We can't allow doubt to take us. We have to believe in something, Jake." Her voice broke, the last vestiges of confidence fading as fear etched itself deeper into her features. They stumbled through the door, stepping into a long corridor. The shadows coiled tighter, whispering promises of terror and doom, taunting them with echoes of pain. Jake felt a pulse of dread. The soft, almost seductive whispers were laced with his sister's voice. "Join us, why fight it? There's nothing left for you, join us quiet." He shouted, desperate to drown them out. With every step, his heart raced, pounding like a drum, echoing in the void. But the hallway stretched endlessly, its walls seeming to constrict. Only the dim light from flickering bulbs illuminated their path, casting shadows that jumped and twisted, mocking their movements. And then they heard it. The sound of soft weeping coming from somewhere ahead, pulling at their hearts like a fishing line. Jake hesitated, his instincts screaming for him to run, but Emily's hand gripped his tighter, and he followed her deeper into the darkness. "Don't," he whispered, but something compelled him, something raw and primal that made him want to turn around and flee. Instead, they moved forward, drawn to the anguished cries. As they approached, the sorrow transformed into a wail and unearthly disbelief that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end. Then, from the shadows, a figure began to materialize. It flickered like a dying flame, revealing a young girl standing alone. Jake squinted, struggling to discern features amidst the chaotic shadows swirling around her. "Help me!" she cried, eyes wide with terror. "I can't get out." Jake turned, but she was no longer beside him. The corridor echoed with a chilling silence. Panic surged through him. He shouted her name, the dread clawing at his throat, but all that returned was the echo of his own voice, swallowed by the darkness. Join us," the chorus returned, surrounding him, suffocating him. Between the shadows and the girl, he felt cornered, trapped in a web of confusion and despair. Had he made the wrong choice? Would he give in to the darkness, or could he still find Emily? With that thought twisting in his gut, he stepped forward, and as he did, the walls closed in tighter. Would he face whatever lay beyond, or succumb to the curse surrounding him? He had to find Emily. But in a place where shadows whisper truths, how could he trust his eyes? The girl's cries pierced the heavy silence like a knife. Jake's heart thundered in his chest, a chaotic rhythm echoing the dread pooling in his stomach. He took a step closer, barely able to push through the flood of questions and fear washing over him. "Who are you?" he asked, forcing each word through trembling lips. The girl's features flickered in and out of focus like a defective TV screen, embodying a hurt so deep it felt ancient. "Please, I'm trapped," she sobbed, her voice full of desperation, fingers reaching toward him but failing to cross the invisible line held by those lurking shadows. Without thinking, Jake moved closer still. If there was any chance this girl knew a way out, he had to take it. But as he edged forward, the shadows twisted and contorted, dark hands stretching out, clawing at him with an insatiable hunger. Stop! Don't go near her! The shadows hissed, 1,000 voices fused into one menacing chorus. A swell of fear threatened to engulf him, but he pushed on through the suffocating gloom, the image of Emily urging him forward. I'm coming, I promise. He shouted, trying to sound brave, though terror laced his voice. He closed his eyes for a brief moment, shutting out the whispers that grew louder, clawing at his sanity. It felt like the walls were closing in, as if they wanted to swallow him whole. And then, a sudden shift, the flickering light brightened for an instant, illuminating a door at the far end of the corridor beyond the girl. A glimmer of hope pierced through the dread. There's a way out. He yelled, breaking free of the girl's frantic gaze, but as Jake dashed toward the door, the shadows writhed violently, slithering around his ankles like living creatures. A sudden scream, a voice unmistakably familiar, pierced through the cacophony. Jake! Emily's voice echoed off the walls, sharp and frantic. Emily! Panic ignited within him, surging like fire in his veins. He turned back, the girl's figure already fading, consumed by the ravenous darkness. Where are you? Over here. Her distressed voice came from somewhere behind him, deeper in the shadows. He spun around just in time to see her silhouette bolting down the corridor, shadows clawing at her, pulling her back. No! He shouted, lunging toward her. Each step felt like wading through thick mud, the shadows curtailing his movements. The very corridor moaned, as if it opposed his will. Jake could feel despair choking him, but he pressed on, fueled by nothing more than his desperate need to save her. Hold on, Emily! He leaped forward, a primal scream bursting from his throat. He reached for her just as she drew near the barricade of darkness. The moment they connected, icy fingers latched onto his wrist. Jake, please! Her eyes were wide, liquid pools of fear, but before he could pull her back, the shadows surged, separating them with a roar that resonated deep within his bones. For a moment, he felt weightless, suspended between the pull of light ahead and the ravenous darkness behind. In that split second, he understood. They were not just shadows. They were alive. They were the remnants of despair, the embodiment of everything he feared. But was it too late? With one last desperate effort, he ripped his hand free, lunging through the doorway ahead. The moment he crossed the threshold, everything changed. The wails of the shadows faded into silence, and he found himself tumbling into a void that felt brighter yet somehow more sinister. Jake landed hard, the impact rattling him. He lifted his head, but all he could see was a blank expanse of white. Uncertainty filled him like a storm. Where was Emily? He could feel the shadows still lurking nearby, whispering secrets in the fabric of reality. Jake? He spun around, heart racing. A familiar voice echoed from somewhere, but it was not Emily's. It beckoned him, and the shadows close behind him surged with an eager pulse. Jake, join us, he hesitated, disbelief washing over him. With every instinct screaming to run, Jake steadied himself, desperate to resist. But what awaited him in this new space? He took a tentative step forward. The void shifted, revealing shapes lurking in the depths. Fear gripped him tighter than the shadows ever did. But he had to find Emily before they took her too. As he took another step, a thought crashed over him: was he still in control? Or had the darkness finally claimed his soul? And then he saw them, figures emerging from the white, faces etched in despair. Jake, he froze, the breath caught in his throat, as he faced the truth he dreaded the most. What had he really escaped? The figures drew closer, their faces morphing into twisted masks of sorrow, horror reflected in every line. Familiar yet alien, they looked like lost souls, that's what they were. Jake could see his father's weary gaze, his mother's silent scream, and old friends he hadn't thought about in years. Jake, they chorused, voices overlapping like a haunting score, melding together into an unsettling melody. Each syllable twisted into a new layer of dread. What do you want? Jake shouted, his voice trembling. "Where's Emily?" Their smiles were haunting, curled, eerie, yet inviting. "Join us," they murmured, reaching their hands towards him, fingers distorting as they stretched. Shadows clung to them like secrets, whispering forgotten memories that he staggered back. No. A primal roar erupted from deep within him. He couldn't fall for their trap. They were a representation of his past, a reflection of regret, but they were not his future. Taking a deep breath, Jake jolted sideways, dodging their outstretched hands. As he ran, the vast whiteness swirled, twisting like a storm flickering between realms. The shadows behind him surged, urgency radiating from their presence, their hunger palpable. "Emily!" Jake screamed again, pushing forward, determination churning like a force of nature. The farther he went, the more the white light began to fade, darkness pooling like ink at his feet. He stumbled into a small room, a stark contrast against the abyss outside. The walls were made of rough, crumbling stone, and a stench of decay invaded his senses. Rusty chains dangled from the ceiling, and a low hum vibrated through the air. But there, huddled in the corner, was the source of his hope. Emily, her eyes wide, searching. She looked so fragile, like a candle flickering in a storm. "Jake!" Her voice was hoarse, strained, but every ounce of familiar love poured into that one word. "Hold on." He dashed towards her and knelt, trying to unfasten the chains binding her wrists. "What happened? Are you okay?" Tears streamed down her face, and the raw fear in her eyes made him question everything around them. "I thought I lost you." "The shadows," she whispered, glancing at the doorway. Jake's heart plummeted. The whispers were rising again, growing more frantic, and he felt the breeze from the shadows swirling around the entrance. "We need to get out of here. Now." Just as he fumbled with the rusty lock, it rattled violently. The shadows roared, thirsting for him, desperate to reclaim what they lost. "Join us," they shrieked, their voices laced with rage. He threw his weight against the lock one last time. A loud crack echoed through the room, the iron snapped. Freedom in his grasp, Jake yanked Emily forward. As they emerged, the world was no longer the blank void, it twisted into a dark forest, gnarled branches reaching out like claws, thick fog swirling through the trees. The shadows fluttered past, almost like frightened birds, as if the darkness that trapped them was fading. But only for the moment. "Where are we?" Jake breathed, fear creeping back in. Emily looked around, a mixture of hope and dread flooding her eyes. I don't know, but they're still here." Suddenly, the ground tremored beneath them. Deep from the forest, an unholy roar echoed, shaking the very core of the earth, a summons that could not be ignored. "Run!" Jake commanded, and together they stumbled forward into the abyss of trees. But the deeper they ran, the more the air thickened, heavier with the weight of all they left behind. And as they glanced back, if only for a second, a figure emerged from the mist, a silhouette that bore the face of someone they once thought lost. Jake, it beckoned, begging. Jake's chest tightened, heart racing, the fog swirling around him like a shroud. He grasped Emily's hand tighter, urgency fueling his steps. What if they were drawn back into the shadows? But the voice lingered, seductive and familiar, whispering truths he had long buried. Would it all end here, consumed by darkness once more? Jake, he turned, the world spinning as the figures from the shadows closed in again. Will you face the past, or will you turn your back and run? In that moment, terror clashed with resolve. One question burned bright in his mind: could they truly escape before the darkness claimed them? The branches twisted above them, gnarled fingers scratching at the sky, their whispers blending with a low, simmering growl from deep within the forest. Jake gripped Emily's hand tighter, eyes darting left and right, searching for an escape route. What had once felt like a fleeting nightmare now solidified into a grave reality. Shadows surrounded them, pulsating like a living thing. "Jake, we have to move." Emily's voice trembled, reflecting the urgency vibrating through the air. He took a deep breath, trembling under the weight of dread, they stumbled into a clearing, illuminated by a pale, sickly light that fought to pierce the thick fog. What lay ahead turned Jake's stomach. The ground was littered with stones, relics half buried, bearing names etched in a language he could not decipher. Each name felt like an anchor to the past, echoes of lives lost, trapped lenses of despair barely visible through the foggy air. "Don't look at them," Jake barked, pulling Emily close. He refused the pull of those names, the urge to dig deeper, to confront more of the past that haunted them. But even as he turned away, the resonant voices clawed at him. "Join us. Make it stop." Emily screamed, her voice fracturing, bursting through the shadows. It was like shattering glass. The world around them blurred, and Jake felt the trembling rise in his chest, urgency sparking into panic. The growl deepened, became clearer, more menacing, as if something massive stirred just out of sight. Was it a creature of the dark, or something worse, like the remnants of lost souls, desperate to reclaim what had been taken from them? "We need to keep moving," Jake insisted, as he dragged Emily farther into the shadows. But with each step, the air thickened, suffocating their resolve. He felt eyes upon him. No, the weight of judgment. What were they seeing? Jake's heart raced. He wouldn't let them drag Emily into despair like before. Not again. As they pressed on, something stirred among the trees. A low figure began forming, a silhouette crafted from the darkness around them. Jake squinted, trying to hold on to the chains of sanity. The figure stepped into the light, revealing familiar features twisted in agony. His father's eyes pleaded with him from behind warped skin, a skin deteriorating as if tortured by time itself. "Jake," the voice echoed in the stillness, as if a distant thunder rode through the branches, a reminder of past grief. He stumbled back, lost for a heartbeat. No. The memories, the guilt, came rushing back like a tidal wave. This isn't real. But deep inside, he felt the familiar tug of guilt, the bond of family and loss that lingered like a bittersweet perfume, heavy in the air. "Join us," it rasped. That he felt the chains of his past groan against him, clawing for attachment. But before he could react, a desperate scream tore from Emily's throat. "Stop!" She stepped forward, eyes blazing with fury. "You're not him. You're just a shadow." Jake's heart jolted. Was it true? Was this form nothing more than a remnant, a mask of fear? The figure hesitated. For a moment, the shadows around tightened, flickering like a dying candle flame. Jake seized the opportunity, yanking Emily back. "Run!" He bolted forward again, weaving through the trees, but the landscape shifted with every stride, the darkness molding to pin their escape. Branches swayed, rearing back as if alive, longing to ensnare them. "Where do we go?" Emily gasped, breathless, despair punctuating her voice. "I don't know." He grunted, sweat beading across his brow. "Just keep moving." But the shadows whispered enticingly, promising to reunite them with lost loved ones, to assuage the unbearable pain dwelling inside. The promise of comfort mingled with the scent of decay. Suddenly, the earth beneath them trembled violently as if rejecting their presence. Trees splintered and cracked, their bark splintering like brittle bone, and amid the chaos, a sharp, piercing roar echoed. Something else, something hungry and ancient, stirred from its slumber. The cry shook the ground itself, reverberating as though drawing closer, a harbinger of doom. "Jake!" Emily gasped, pulling him to a halt. He could see the terror painted across her face, her conviction wavering under the shadow of doubt. The figure returned, its form shifting, morphing into a grotesque reminder of everything they had run from. Desperation blurred Jake's vision, pushing him to make a choice. Would they fall to the same fate as those before, or could they forge a new path, one cast in light? Another roar pierced the air, and he felt the ground beneath tremble once more. Something wicked awaited them, forcing Jake to confront the question that loomed larger than life. Could they escape the shadows, or were they already trapped within? With that thought, they turned to each other, eyes locked in a panic-stricken vow. "Hold on tight, Emily. Whatever happens, we face it together." And then, they ran deeper into the embrace of unknown terror, the splitting roar chasing them into the gathering dark. Jake and Emily burst through the dense fog, their breath mingling with desperation. The growls echoed behind them, monstrous and unrelenting. A jagged path opened up ahead, the forest thickening on either side, closing in like a vice. Their hearts hammered, a frantic duet against the towering trees as they pressed forward. What if it finds us? Emily gasped, glancing back, panic etched across her face. What if we run into one of those shadows again? We won T. Jake's voice fired back, tougher than he felt. We're almost free. We just need to find a way out together. With every ounce of determination, they sprinted deeper into the woods. Behind them, the terrifying roar of the monstrous thing reverberated through the still air, sending shards of dread skittering down their spines. The shadows churned in a frenzy, rising and twisting like an angry ocean churning against the shore. Then, in the distance, a faint glow pierced through the canopy. Look! Jake pointed, hope flickering in his chest. That must be a way out. Desperation fueled them. They raced toward the light, pushing through the underbrush, limbs scratching along branches, but they didn't register the pain. The escape was near. As they neared the glow, the shadows behind them writhed, swirling with resentment, hovering just out of reach. A haunting whisper floated on the shivering breeze, echoing in Jake's ears, threatening to drag him back. Join us, you can't escape, be one of us, not now. Jake shouted, clenching his fists. You can't have us. Drawing closer, they emerged from the trees into a clearing bathed in ethereal light, a stark contrast to the darkness that surrounded them. The air felt alive and electric, tingling against their skin. There, at the center of the clearing, stood an enormous ancient tree with glowing roots sprawling toward the ground. Rays of light pulsed rhythmically as if beckoning them closer. Is it safe? Emily asked, uncertain. Her voice trembled, but no fear could dim the curiosity that sparked within her. The tree seemed both entrancing and formidable. We won't know until we try. Jake urged, pulling her closer. As they approached, warmth enveloped them, pulling the shadows back in haggard whispers. The tree thrummed, its energy resonating with something deep within. Jake's heart raced not just with fear, but with the undeniable feeling that this was a turning point. Together. They echoed in unison and joined hands, feeling the surge of power flow through them from the tree, a protective warmth that wrapped around them like a cocoon, both grounding and exhilarating. The shadows recoiled as if repelled by the light radiating from the tree, their voices rising into chaotic screams. You can't escape. You were chosen. You belong to us. No. We belong to ourselves. Jake shouted defiantly, lifting the knife he had held since the dark kitchen, its blade now gleaming with renewed purpose. Together, they plunged it toward the roots of the tree where shadows writhed, severing the darkness like cutting fraying threads. Suddenly, a shockwave erupted from where the blade met the roots. Radiance surged through the clearing, illuminating everything, consuming the shadows in blinding light. The cacophony of tortured cries rose to a terrible pitch, a symphony of fear and fury obliterating the lingering darkness. An explosion of sheer energy enveloped them, and Jake felt time slow. The shadows dissolved, retreating into nothingness as the air filled with a soft, warm glow finally freed. As the radiance washed away the last tendrils of despair, Jake and Emily staggered back, breathless but triumphant. They looked at each other, relief flooding over them. Did we really do it? Emily whispered, tears of joy glimmering in her eyes. Jake nodded, sudden clarity igniting within him. We faced our fears together. We took back control. But just as they began to breathe deeply, the light started to wane. They heard a soft rustle beneath the tree, and Jake felt the air grow thick once more. The moment felt almost too perfect, but clouds began to gather above, darkening there. Victory. It's not over, is it? Emily's voice trembled, a hint of doubt creeping back. We'll face whatever comes next. Jake vowed. Together, always together. Just then, a shadowy figure emerged, but it felt different, less tangible, more human. The outline sharpened into clarity, revealing the familiar features of his sister. Her haunted expression bore the weight of everything he had fought against. Jake, she called softly, sadness lacing each syllable, fear coursed through him, but determination mingled with the warmth of hope. No! He shouted, raising his hand. We've faced the darkness. You're not part of it anymore. She hesitated, and with every ounce of strength, he stepped forward, the knife glimmering between them. Stay with us. Emily urged, her voice cutting through Jake's panic. We can break this together. Jake stretched his hand toward his sister, uncertainty coiling around his heart like a serpent. You're safe now. We can find the light. Please come back to us. A flicker of recognition sparked in her eyes as the shadows that cloaked her began to dissipate. The flicker became brighter, illuminating the corner of despair in her gaze, but just as hope threatened to smother the encroaching darkness, a voice boomed, shaking the ground once more. You cannot escape us. Your past will always haunt you. Not if we face it. Jake shouted back, resolute, grounding himself in determination. We've broken the cycle. We're not bound by your darkness. The figure of his sister began to fade, yet there was hope in her expression. You have always held the light, Jake. Protect it. Jake held Emily firmly, tightly in his grip, and with that, they together pressed forward into the light, into the unknown, united, ready to face whatever lay ahead. The whispers faded, the shadows retracting, as they moved past the remnants of fear and sorrow, leaving behind the echoes of the past. Together, they said in unison, stepping through the threshold, ready to embrace whatever the future held, knowing they had the power to overcome darkness together. Jake stood tall, heart full, as they crossed into the warmth of dawn. So, what are you waiting for? This is the moment to show your support. You need to subscribe now to catch all the spine-chilling stories coming your way. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. It's vital for us. Let us hear your reactions. Flood our comments section with theories about Jake and Emily's journey. What do you think awaits them next? And don't wait even one more second, share this story with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support makes all the difference.